Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are tackling London. It is just a staggering, massive metropolis. I mean, today, the capital of the United Kingdom is home to approximately 8.9 million people. That's huge. But to truly understand how it reached this massive modern scale, we have to travel all the way back almost 2,000 years. We're going to discover how an endless, relentless cycle of destruction and rebirth literally built the city we know today. To put things in perspective, nearly 40% of modern London's residents were actually born overseas. Now, you might think this incredible diversity is just a modern phenomenon, right? Something born from our globally interconnected world. But it's really not. As you'll see, this is the direct result of 2 millennia of continuous immigration, violent conquest, and the literal layering of different cultures one upon the other over successive centuries. It's like a giant puzzle. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our chronological roadmap for today. We'll start with Roman roots, move through the Saxons and Normans, explore medieval disasters, the Tudor and Stuart eras, the industrial metropolis, and wrap up with the modern megacity. Let's get started. Section 1. Roman Roots to Ruin. So modern London literally owes its entire existence to the Roman legions invading Britain. Back in 43 AD, they founded Londinium right at the River Thames's narrowest point. But talk about a rapid boom and bust. Just over a decade later, in 60 AD, the Celtic Queen Boudica led a massive rebellion and completely burned the city to the ground. No way around it. They were wiped out. The Romans, however, bounced back. They rebuilt and constructed these massive defensive walls between 190 and 225 AD. You'd actually recognize some of the gates by name today, like Ludgate. The population swelled to 60,000. But as the Roman Empire collapsed, the legions completely abandoned Britain in 410 AD. They just left, turning Londinium into an empty, ruined ghost town. Moving right along to Section 2, Saxons, Vikings, and Normans. Jump to the 5th and 6th centuries. New Germanic Anglo-Saxon arrivals showed up, but you know what they did? They completely ignored those empty Roman ruins. Instead, they built a brand new settlement called London Wick. They built it to the west of the old Roman walls, right around where modern Covent Garden is today. It became this booming trading center of 10,000 people. It's actually where Bishop Mellitus founded the very first iteration of St. Paul's Cathedral in the year 604. But unfortunately, all that incredible commercial wealth and religious treasure, it made them a highly attractive target for overseas pagan raiders. Enter the Vikings. The 830s saw the very first Viking raids strike London, and the violence just escalated. By 871, the Great Heathen Army actually occupied the city. It wasn't until 886 that English forces, led by King Alfred the Great, managed to take London back. And what was his grand strategy? He forced the entire population to move back inside the safety of those ancient, abandoned Roman walls. This brilliantly brought the city back to its original footprint. By the 11th century, we start to see a fascinating dual power structure emerge. It's really cool. On one side, you have Westminster Abbey, completed around 1060 by Edward the Confessor, as the focal point for royal and religious ceremonies. But on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, following the pivotal Norman conquest in 1066, the invading Duke William of Normandy built the brutal Stone Tower of London. Now, this wasn't for worship. This was a hardcore fortress designed for absolute military suppression of the native population. Section 3, Medieval Growth and Disaster. This era brought immense expansion, independent governance secured by the 1215 Magna Carta, and a truly dramatic population explosion. Just look at these numbers. From a Roman peak of 60,000, the population had dipped all the way down to just 15,000 by 1100 AD. But by 1300, it bounced right back up to 80,000. This boom was heavily fueled by foreign immigrant merchants pouring in and major infrastructure projects, like completing the iconic stone London Bridge in 1209. People even had shops and homes jutting out over the water on the bridge. But what happens when you pack that many people into such an incredibly tight space? 200. That is the staggering number of Londoners who died every single day at the absolute height of the 1348 Black Death. The winding, tightly packed medieval streets were just incredibly vulnerable to disease, and the plague completely decimated the population. It was devastating. Section 4, Tudor Wealth, Stuart Ashes. So the 16th century Tudor boom saw global trading companies accelerate capitalism, and William Shakespeare's famous Globe Theatre flourished. But that prosperity, It gave way to absolute chaos in the 17th century Stuart era. I mean, look at this timeline. In 1605, Guy Fawkes failed his plot to blow up Parliament. By 1642, a bitter civil war erupted, which culminated in King Charles I being publicly beheaded right in London in 1649. And if bloody political turmoil wasn't enough, the plague returned in 1665, claiming another 60,000 lives. Then, the very next year, in 1666, the Great Fire swept through and completely wiped out the old medieval core of the city. Talk about a rough century. Out of those ashes, architect Christopher Wren stepped up and rebuilt the city, largely using fire-resistant stone and brick. But have you ever wondered why London's West End feels so culturally different from the financial city district today? Well, this rebuilding phase cemented a deep physical and cultural divide that still echoes. Over in the West End, you had the aristocratic elite building these lavish mansions and theaters around the royal court in Westminster. Meanwhile, the City of London to the east became the mercantile heartland. It was a middle-class hub of global trade that housed the Bank of England and the East India Company. All right, Section 5, the industrial metropolis. Moving into the 18th and 19th centuries, massive infrastructure projects and the arrival of railways swelled London into literally the largest city in the world. And nothing showcased this dominance quite like the 1851 Great Exhibition at the Crystal Palace. It drew a whopping 6 million global visitors. It was the ultimate flex of Victorian imperial and technological supremacy. But we have to keep in mind, all this opulence totally masked a much darker reality. London was also filled with poverty-stricken, overcrowded Dickensian slums. Crime soared so high that Robert Peel actually had to establish the Metropolitan Police in 1829 just to keep the city from tearing itself apart. And then there was the smell. Juxtaposed against all that incredible Victorian wealth was the grim reality of 1858. The River Thames was essentially acting as an open sewer, packed with human and industrial waste. It smelled so incredibly horrific that locals simply dubbed it the Great Stink. But much worse than the smell, this contaminated water caused frequent, highly deadly cholera outbreaks. And this brilliantly illustrates how London solves its problems through massive engineering. When the Thames clogged with waste, civil engineer Joseph Bazalgette stepped up to the plate. He orchestrated the construction of a massive, modern sewer network designed to move the waste far downstream. This monumental public works project successfully ended the cholera outbreaks once and for all, and is credited with saving more Victorian lives than any other single official's actions. What a game changer! Section 6. Modern multicultural megacity. So the crucial point is that the 20th century pushed London into the modern age, but definitely not before testing it with its greatest existential threats yet. The skies over London literally became a battlefield. World War I brought terror via German Zeppelins, killing 670 civilians, while 124,000 London men never returned from the trenches. Then came the absolute horror of World War II. During the Blitz, the city suffered 71 separate air raids. The Luftwaffe dropped 18,000 tons of explosives, killing 30,000 Londoners and completely shattering the city's physical landscape. But yet again, from destruction came rebirth. The severely damaged, overcrowded Victorian slums were finally pulled down to make way for new developments. And crucially, massive waves of global immigrants arrived from across the Commonwealth, which completely revitalized the city's workforce and its culture. By the 1960s, this new dynamic energy birthed a global cultural revolution, the famous Swinging 60s, headlined by cultural icons like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Which leaves us with one final fascinating question. How does a city that has been burned, plagued, and bombed repeatedly over 2,000 years become the most diverse megametropolis on the planet? Well, the answer lies in that continuous, relentless layering we talked about. Every fire, every invasion, every new wave of immigrants tore down the old and added a fresh, vital layer to the foundation. It is an incredible testament to human resilience, proving that the modern, interconnected capital of the world wasn't built in a day. It was built, destroyed, and rebuilt over 2 millennia. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.